Welcome everyone, dear viewers and listeners. Today, a new episode of the In Production podcast. We have Mike with us. Mike, nice to meet you, and please tell us more about yourself and why should people listen?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Nick. I'm an interesting fellow. I'm a family guy first, kind of like a fake nerd, real practitioner kind of deal. I'm newer to this AI stuff, but super excited to be on your pod here.
Well, you have a very interesting profile, and we're going to unpack it because you came into AI through sales and partnerships at Telecom and SaaS companies. I mean, you don't have a traditional path. You're not an AI researcher. You're not an engineer. You're not a data practitioner. At what point did you decide that, okay, operationalizing AI is going to be the job that I want to do? What did you see in those earlier roles and in those other positions that enabled you to make this jump that you were missing maybe in this new position?
Yeah, it's a great question, Nick. Throughout my career, I've always been really ingrained in the technology, and I've been in telecommunications and technology the whole way. Aside from understanding sales and relationships and partnerships and everything that comes along with that, I've always been a constant advocate for curiosity and learning, and so I've always learned the technology as well. And telecommunications, that's some boring old stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
with telecommunications, artificial intelligence kind of came along with that. Really, my first exposure to that came through those god awful voice IVAs or IVRs where people get frustrated and yell person receptionist or whatever you can to get to an operator. But that really sparked my curiosity in working with products like Dialogflow, the original flavor of that, and just seeing like, oh, okay, maybe there's something here. So I start to learn some of that and some of the
Mm-hmm.
technology that came along with that. And that really piqued my interest, and just naturally along the way, just picked up more and more of the tech side of things. Because as a seller, it helps to be able to explain the technology
Mm-hmm.
in a way that resonates with the persona or buyer on the other end. Not everyone speaks tech, and if you can't explain it simply, then you can't explain it at all. So that really is what enabled me and piqued my interest into getting more into the technology side of things.
Very interesting. The technology side got you from the sales side. Yeah. And actually, I've been reading more about your job, and I gotta tell you that you're doing something very unusual because you're building AI into net carriers' own operations, and then simultaneously, you also have a mandate to productize AI as something that you sell to clients. How different are those two problems in practice? Which one is harder?
It's kind of a trick question. I think first it puts us kind of at an advantage because we're dog fooding everything that we're productizing. So we're going through the whole transformation internally here. We understand kind of like the ins and outs and nuances with AI assisted code development, operationalizing different workflows and understanding business process from the inside and what it takes as an organization to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the product side, I mean, we're not a huge company by any means. We're just over 50 headcount, been around for 26 years. So we kind of fit that like target market of who we're trying to go after with this
Mm-hmm.
tech. So it's definitely helpful in being able to understand that use case, what kind of blockers or enablement issues you run into along the way, and being able to tell that story to people who are interested in that type of solution. So that's helpful, and it's not as hard to productize it once you kind of thoroughly understand it. And what's
Mm-hmm.
cool about it is that as an organization, being able to productize it and then explain it as a company is huge. It's huge because usually you get like the sales and maybe some technical folks in the sales process who go
Mm-hmm.
through and they understand what you're doing. But every single person with this in this organization can explain what we're going through, what the technology is, where it fits, how it benefits them and their daily roles, what their experience was like in adopting the technology. Because that's one part of it too,
Mm-hmm.
is not everyone's going to jump right into the pool. It's kind of like a tiered approach where everyone kind of comes to that, oh wow, that aha moment with the technology and starts using it. So being able to have everyone in the organization explain their own perspective and really live it definitely helps with the product side of things. Yeah, so I mean they're kind of one and the same and necessary. I think it's huge in the
It's like two
space.
hands of the same body.
Yeah, it's a big part of the story.
Okay. You also posted on a very interesting issue. You compared a gap between an independent worker and somebody working as an enterprise employee. And you mentioned that there is around 3 times gap in how the individual worker is using AI, more getting more value from it in comparison to somebody working in an enterprise. And it's not because the technology is enabled, the problem is the permission, that simply you don't have the permission to use certain tools or do certain things because you have policies and mandates and all those things. So when did you arrive at NetCarrier? What was the permission problem situation at that moment? How did you start moving it? How did you see other organizations move it successfully or unsuccessfully?
Yeah, I think at NetCarrier as a whole, we didn't necessarily have like an outright policy or permissions based anything, and so that kind of left some ambiguity around: can I use this? Can I not use this? What should I be doing with this? How do I get approval for this? Is this something we want to do? Which definitely leaves some gaps. And we have that all taken care of now. There's a nice policy that's really flexible and open for experimentation, which is a big part of this. And the organizations that struggle with AI adoption are the ones that are siloed into one particular tool, one particular way of doing things. Let's say a company who's really big on the Microsoft ecosystem. Not knocking Microsoft and their vision and their stack of applications, but and when you kind of compare some of the features and functionalities, or at least use cases you can execute with something like Copilot, they don't necessarily stack up to some of the other tools that are out there. But if you're an organization who only has Copilot as your one tool, you're handicapping everyone in the org to try and figure out how to fit a square peg through a round hole. And that's where organizations struggle the most. Independently as a consumer user, you can go out and experiment and see what works. You can sign up for free trials. You can go out and decide what you want to put in there. Now, as an organization, you can't just go and start dumping data into all these different tools, but you can do it in a safe way. You can do it and say, okay, well, here's what acceptable looks like. You can go out, you can try these new tools, you can have a solid business use case. You got to be careful of proprietary data or
Yeah,
have
sure.
some sort of data policy, right? And then have at it, right? It's moving so fast that if you're not operating at that same bleeding edge safely, right? But if you're not operating at that same bleeding edge, then you're going to fall behind at some point. And falling behind, I mean, in the next, I think this year we're ending the first quarter, it's been crazy with what these frontier providers are putting out. So that could be really critical if you fall behind 12 months. I mean, you're really going to be at a disadvantage.
It's like a generation.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's not. It's for sure. I'm also curious about. I recently read one article, and in that article there was a saying that a next generation of winners are going to be software companies that offer services or disguise themselves as services. And one of your offerings, Connect Smart, is being positioned directly as a managed service, and it's not a software product. It's a very specific positioning choice. What did you learn about how mid-market companies actually see that kind of offer, how they buy that kind of offer, how do they deploy AI? Was there something that pushed you into choosing to be offering managed service instead of software product right now?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. So one of the main factors in moving towards more of a managed service instead of a self-service SaaS offering comes with the complexity of understanding on how you actually like operationalize AI. From what we've seen, the magic, the man behind the curtain, that's kind of like the easy part. It's the monitoring and continuous improvement flywheel that a lot of companies in the space don't understand, that once you turn the AI on, it's not necessarily a set and forget. You run into all sorts of things like edge cases, right? You can test and test and test. Then you run into edge cases. You can run into model depreciation hallucinations where the AI was performing at a certain level and then all of a sudden it takes a step back. You got to be able to see into that black box to understand that. Is a smaller organization going to be able to do that and dedicate the resources to be on top of that?
Yeah.
Some may, but most won't. And when we talk about the interface, like the self-serve, like product-led growth type stuff, where you go in, you build the agents, and you click go, that's still a lot of work in understanding how you map the existing process or refactor your existing process and get it to
Mm-hmm.
work with the technology. Technology came after the process, so you got to kind of look at like, well, does this make sense? Do we have a process? Are customers really going to go through that? Are organizations really going to go through that and dedicate the right amount of time? I think that studies would show probably not. A lot of these AI initiatives fail out the gate because the demo looks good, but the rest falls apart when they go to production. So
Mm-hmm.
we see that gap, and that's our reasoning behind the managed services part. And the managed services part is agnostic across channels. We're a legacy telecommunications company at heart, right? But we're focused on all of the different modalities for channels. So that that guidance and expertise we feel is something that will really enable these companies to use the technology and be successful with it. So that's kind of our mindset behind it.
That's like that's like a new model for because previously you just sell software licenses, people are using it, everybody's happy. With AI, it's way more usage and outcome based. You constantly need to monitor it because it has this intelligence that can produce sometimes outputs that are not
Yeah.
expected. So you always have to have somebody that's going to be watching it. And a lot of companies right now, they implement governance models because they think that the governance model will save them from any mistakes. It will give frameworks, accountability, make AI explainable for a lot of companies. I'm curious, in your experience, have you seen governance models that actually became breaks instead of enablers? And how do you actually avoid building a governance model that will prevent you from doing things instead of just building the guidelines that make sense?
Yeah, I think that definitely scales with the size of the organizations. Smaller organizations, depending on what type of data they deal with, can obviously be more nimble in utilizing the various governance frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
Where they break is being overly inclusive. My mind goes to governance over what? What are we governing? Well, we're governing the data that goes in and the data that goes out. Who's responsible and what happens with that type of information.
Mm-hmm.
So those are like the main things to take into account, as well as the safety around those, the accuracy around those things. Once you have those elements, you can put together a pretty sound governance policy. If you go into it and neuter the inputs and outputs completely, that becomes a break, a real blocker. Because then what are you using the AI for? I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
can probably put together like a script and do it that way and have the
Yeah.
same outcome. And that's not to say like when we talk about like governance and everything that goes along with it, you can solve some of those breakpoints by using private inference, private models. Does every
Mm-hmm.
organization have that capability? Probably not. Compute and servers and RAM and all that stuff is really
Costs. Yeah.
expensive right now. Can you augment some of that and only have sensitive information flow through those private type models? Yeah, absolutely. And so you can kind of come at it with a hybrid approach when you talk about governance. And similarly here at the company, we have the same kind of thing where certain stuff can touch these tools and certain stuff can touch these tools.
Mm-hmm.
And that removes a lot of those breakpoints.
That's a great tips. I'm also curious, what's your take on workflows? So AI-enabled workflows, for example, for client-facing automations like call handling, escalations. What did you discover about how decisions were actually being made by humans who were doing the work, and now you have an automation or AI, and now they are doing those escalations? What was the difference between humans? Because usually with the world leaders even on this podcast that I talk to, they tell me you have your SOP, that's one thing, and then and then the way that people actually do the work, that's a totally different thing. So, what was your experience comparing those two models?
It's that's a great question. So this is is more likely than not applicable to any company. So you have your SOPs, and then you have this internal brain trust of, let's call it like tribal knowledge, the stuff that everyone just knows, like, okay, we get the SOP, but when this happens, we do
You do
this.
this. Yeah.
And that's passed through employee to employee, manager to report, and that doesn't necessarily get documented cleanly anywhere. And as you stand up some of these workflows, you start to see those blind spots really quick, right? And you hope that it's not part of a decreased like customer experience, because when you're in a services business, like customer experience is key.
Yeah.
So you want to maintain a certain level of customer experience and satisfaction. But at the same time, immediately you see, as long as you're watching, right? Because that's part of this, you got to watch.
Yeah.
As long as you're watching it, you start to see like, how do we handle that, right? And then you start to uncover those blind spots in your SOP, and you go back and you say, well, is this process sound? Because it doesn't look like the SOP is right here. Like everyone's doing this, and they just know to do this. Do we need to refactor the existing process? And that's some of what I hinted on earlier of when you deploy AI, pretty quickly you're going to understand like where your gaps are and where your process is failing. You may not see that right away behind the scenes, but when you
But
deploy
you
the
will see
tech,
it in the exception queue.
yeah, you'll see it right away. So that's the biggest part of that. Now, the human element internally, the users of the technology, and externally, people are going to people, and that's where you're going to get the largest amount of edge cases. And where you didn't necessarily think of, well, what happens when someone does this, and then all of a sudden you see it and you're like, oh shoot. And then on the flip side, like the receiver, let's talk about like a voice conversation, someone who gets a handoff or an escalation from an AI agent, like how do they receive it, like what does their workflow look like? So you gotta see both sides of that equation to understand what the experience is like.
Curious in your take, to continue this topic, about the deployment. So in your experience, I saw that you have been at a company called Agent before it was acquired. And what did you see about where voice AI was breaking down in a live contact center environment? And what did that experience teach you about that you are now implementing and taking forward with you, and how you're thinking about deployments right now?
Definitely. So I learned a lot in that short stint there, because we were dealing with large contact centers for some big name clients, a very large call center provider, and they had multiple clients underneath them, and so everyone's interaction with technology is a little bit different. And there was a lot of focus there, not only just on customer experience, but on the call center agent experience, um, as an operator. That really opened my eyes to just, it's not just about customer experience, it's about the employee experience too. Because if the technology is bad for the person who's operating it,
Yeah.
then they're not going to use it. And in that space, the turnover is extremely high. It's just a thankless job. You get screamed at all day, depending on what you're doing in the contact center. So I learned a lot about that. Agent was kind of like an emerging technology at the time. Now there's tons of similar stuff, but it particularly was a model around AI agent assist in fraud mitigation. And so it was a fairly advanced model at the time, where it could track different patterns in fraud. And that to me was really empowering, to have a call center agent being able to see like, oh, this is a fraudulent activity, I need to do something about it. And that's where it was kind of like, we got something that can act in real time and take action. Like that's empowering. And so that taught me a lot about how models work, some training information about that. I think that voice AI breaks down the most in a live contact center on the agent side of things. The inbound call or outbound call that gets connected is the easy part. It's the handoff to the agent in a call center. Call center agents are often inundated with various different applications from multiple programs, multiple providers, and they may have like 30 windows open just for one program that they may be operating in, and that's just their morning. Then the afternoon, they switch to someone else's program, and they've got a whole bunch of other different policies, procedures, applications where they're supposed to be using those things too. So there's a lot of overload that goes on when they're actually handling those calls. And when you insert yourself as a technology into that environment, you have to be very precise. You don't want to noisy up their screen with something that doesn't work. So it's got to work. It's got to make their lives easier, and that's probably the biggest takeaway there was the agent experience part of things.
Very cool. Let's talk about somebody who is listening to this podcast right now and they think, wow, this is very interesting. I would love to do something. I would love to be the person that drives AI in my organization. And you have been vocal about companies. Like, you don't really need a lot of stuff. You don't need a task force, a working group. You don't need to spend time on all those things. You just need a single motivated person that has a mandate, has a budget, and has authority, to put AI into actual workflows. In your experience, how does the real mandate looks like? How do you, as the operator, understand that you actually have real support in the business? It's not just words, it's not just cosmetic support.
Yeah, I think that the boilerplate mandates of we all use AI now, it's just not a successful tactic.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that at some of the biggest companies out there of AI this, AI that. We all use AI. And what that does is it creates a lot of friction and forced attempts at usage. And you find that a lot of people just burn out and they just won't use the tools. The biggest thing here is understanding what some of those underlying friction points may be, and then starting to like sprinkle in different parts of the business, mini champions, so to say. So one
Mm-hmm.
person has decent amount of gets some approval, can be any approval, any amount. Like let's go purchase some Claude team seats, right? Get 5 seats and let's figure out how to use them.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being like, we purchased 5 seats, we have to use them. No, let's figure it out. And that comes through listening. That comes through sitting with employees, understanding what their day to day is. And that person has to understand multiple parts of the business naturally. And then just uncover like, hey, I know you do this all the time. Let's test it out. Let's see what happens. Like let's experiment and see if we can make something of this, rather than this is the new way. You must do it this way. That just leads to something that'll break long term.
Yeah.
So it's a really strategic approach of understanding what the business needs and where you can fill in those gaps with the tech.
Mm.
The other way around, I mean, it's just you get a lot of usage in seats that don't get used. I mean, it just ends up.
Yeah, just wasted. And that's a big fear for a lot of mid-market companies that I know. Like, let's say somebody comes to you and they tell you, Mike, I know that I want AI. I need AI yesterday. And my boss is telling me that we need AI, and everybody's telling us that we need AI, but I don't know where to start. We have limited technical staff. We have a tight budget. Imagine that person comes to you. What would be your first conversation with that person before you even talk product, before you even talk any next steps? What are the things that you want to clarify? What is the common ground that you want to establish with any mid-market company before you even actually start explaining them and go into the details?
Yeah, I want to know everything about their day-to-day business operations. I want to know. I want to sit with the different, if multi-department type business. I want to sit with the receptionist. I want to sit with finance, accounting. I want to sit with customer service. I want to
Mm-hmm.
understand what their day-to-day is like. I want to understand what that full customer journey is like for them. And we're not just talking about like customers or revenue generating type companies. It could be a municipality, right? Municipalities, they
Mm-hmm.
get tons and tons of calls. Could be about parking tickets, could be about waste pickup and disposal schedule, could be about town office hours, could be about permitting, right? I want to understand what that process kind of looks like and how that flows through the organization. But you want to sit with each one of those stakeholders and departments to understand that better and put together a full picture and really get to the bottom of where there's pain. I mean, that's the part, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to understand where the technology could potentially fit and not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
A great example, I mean, let's talk about like an automotive repair shop. Sounds pretty simple. They just make appointments, stuff like that. But I would say that's probably not where they would find the most value. It
Mm-hmm.
turns out, and this is speaking with someone there, and this doesn't have anything to do with voice conversations or anything like that. Their biggest bottleneck is filing all the paperwork for claims with the insurance carriers and organizing that with photos and submitting the forms and paperwork on time, and
Mm-hmm.
then following up with those insurance providers to make sure that they get paid out on them. That's their biggest friction point and bottleneck, because that keeps their lights on and getting those payments from the insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
If you went the other way around, you say, oh no, it's totally people calling in saying, hey, I wrecked my car, I need it fixed, and then scheduling that. But understanding the business a little bit more and saying like, well, what's your biggest bottleneck? Well, it's us getting paid by the providers. All right, well, why don't you tell me a little bit more about that, and how we kind of ease some of that friction?
Just follow the money.
Yeah, well, I mean that's part of it. I mean, when you talk about stuff like nonprofit or municipality, there's other pain points. I mean, usually they're operating in a stricter budget. They don't have ways to generate new revenue because it's all tax income based.
Yeah, but usually there is another key resource that they're lacking. So you just need to identify what is that key
Right.
resource. For companies, that's money. For nonprofit, that can be
Yeah.
something else.
It's usually staff augmentation, right?
Uh-huh.
It's filling in
Yeah,
filling in the void. Maybe they needed to hire someone, and they've got a group of people who are doing one job, but it's split up three ways, and so they need to figure out how to augment that.
interesting. And the question for the future. So let's say a year passed, and a year from now, what needs to happen for mid-market companies, how they are actually using AI, how they're implementing AI in their day-to-day, that you would understand that the whole industry is moving into the right direction? Because there is a lot of hype right now, and it's a good thing because people are excited about new tools, new ways to do things, but at the same time it creates a lot of noise, and you really need to have very good tuned in clarity to understand what is the noise and what is actually the signal. So what would be an indication for you that the industry is moving towards the signal instead of hype? Or what would be the signal that industry is hyping down?
I th- I have it in my head that full transparency around agent outcomes is the real signal here. I have yet to really see anyone that's been fully transparent around creating a flywheel easily,
Mm-hmm.
that you can just see like, all right, this is why this isn't working, this is why this is working. I mean, those are real proof points, being able to transparently see like, all right, it works. There's a lot of like mystery around like, is this a clever magic trick? Is this really AI? Is this just
Black box.
software? Yeah, software repack. This is the new software, right? It's repackaged. This is all. We're in a bubble. If someone out there really comes up with a nice, transparent way of showcasing, like this is performance. This is how we're moving the needle, and you can see it anytime you want. That's a huge proof point, and that's something that anyone can look at and be like, well, this is exactly why this happened. Now there are other ways to do that, but you kind of gotta like duct tape it all together. It's not very user friendly. You got to be a dev, you got to be a machine learning kind of guy to understand what everything means. That's not the way of the future. This is supposed to be easy. This is supposed to be the easy button. So when you can look at that and just look at it and be like, "Yep, it works," that will be the okay. We're on the right path. Right now we're kind of in like this dogfight of like who's the best. So I think some players are just like, we don't want anyone else to really know like what's happening behind the curtain. But at some point, someone will just say, hey, it's time to show everyone. And I've seen firsthand some of those demos from a couple of frontier
Mm-hmm.
companies, and they're promising. They're promising, but no one's released any of this stuff yet. So I guess time will tell.
The time will tell, definitely. It's very important. I think the most important in what you said is you, especially for a company in a highly regulated industry, you need to show this auditability. Like if you get a question why this decision was made and you use some kind of AI to do it, and you can't just say AI did it. And
Right.
why did it do what it did it? Well, we don't know. You can. That's really not happening. God bless those people that just implement the AI and then they don't think about them, because it's going to be huge problems for them or for their organizations in the future. And I hope that by sharing information like this, by raising awareness, we do our part in getting the industry into the right way, steering the conversation, steering the company, steering the folks that are going to listen to this into the way for building the AI that is more predictable, the initiatives that don't really have to be complicated in the beginning. Just find the resource that you're lacking the most, and AI will help you get it. And once you get it, that's going to build a little bit of trust, and you can use the trust in your company and with your clients to get to the new heights. So it's been a really great conversation, Mike. Thank you for sharing all the insights. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.